Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Lunchtime Launch Tips. Like you've been seeing me more than on a Wednesday these last couple of weeks. We had a great live on Monday with another fabulous female, and I have Rasheda Abdullahi with us today, an amazing lawyer and legal professional. And we're going to talk about the 5 key legal protections every business needs. But before we get into it, let me just introduce you to who Rasheda actually is. So Rasheda is an award-winning lawyer and founder of Strand Sahara, the online legal service for SMEs in the UK and across Africa. So she proudly serves entrepreneurs of African descent. Strand Sahara makes legal services more relevant and accessible, preparing businesses for growth and investment. I love that. And I can't wait to get into this because it is something that many of us overlook. But literally, I could kind of chew your ears off. So tell us about who you are, Rasheda, and the journey so far.
Thank you so much for having me, firstly, and that wonderful introduction. But as you said, my name's Rasheda Abdullahi. I always wanted to be a lawyer and started out my career practicing, qualifying at the bar to become a barrister, and then ended up spending 10 years working at a global law firm doing international arbitration, which essentially is a form of dispute resolution for, large multinationals, the sort of household names. But I came to a realization that actually my real purpose, the thing that I really wanted to do was to build up my own community, to see more African-owned, Black-owned businesses doing well so that we've got that economic empowerment within our community, which then leads to all of the other opportunities that we need. So I started Strand Sahara after 10 years in big law.
Wow.
To achieve that purpose, to say to fellow business owners that, look, if you really want to build a business that has the capability to survive for the long term, to get the levels of success that you've been dreaming of, not just for you, but for your legacy, your children or your community, then understanding legal protections is key. And, I totally get why so many business owners, especially small business owners, do not necessarily seek legal protection. There's all sorts of reasons around costs, accessibility, lack of representation. And so I really felt that I was in a perfect position to do something about that. I have the experience, I've got the background, I understand. And Strand Sahara is all about basically bringing that to life.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such an important issue. And yet so many business owners overlook it. Why do you think that is? I mean, I have some thoughts around that, but why do you think that is?
I think ultimately it's, well, to be fair, there are lots of reasons, and I don't want to presume for anyone, but some surveys have been done, and the things that come out consistently are, in no particular order, one, not really understanding what legal protections they need, and even when they do look at, documents like a contract, having no idea what it says, frankly, because it's all written in jargon, and that is a real problem. A lot of legal documents are essentially written for lawyers and judges and not for the business people who actually need to understand them and use them. It's also around cost. Now, obviously, when you're a small business and you're just starting out, there are so many things that you need to prioritize. And it's understandable that people think automatically about spending their money on getting their product or service ready for market because they're thinking about, getting money in. What they don't think about necessarily are the things that can go wrong or the consequences of not making their business safe. And sometimes you don't really feel that until it happens. And then I think another reason, aside from cost, is also that unfortunately there's a bit of a reputation that I think has developed around the legal profession being really stuffy, not really understanding how business works, being the no people, they're just there to say no to you all the time and not necessarily give you the sort of commercial advice that you need to move forward in your business. I can understand all of those points, but have developed Strand Sahara with them in mind to try and make sure that people understand the benefits, the value that legal services add to their business.
So important. And, I always tell people that the way you launch something that is for the short term is very different to how you launch something that is legacy driven and for the future. And if you want to launch something that is a fly by night, that you have a massive launch, it's phenomenal, and then dies a slow death, then fine. You can afford not to think about legal protection. But if you want to launch something sustainably for the future, it's so imperative that you have legal protection and that your business is, of course, secure. But it's such an important message that we have to convey, because we are in this microwave society, and we want things quick and cheap sometimes. But actually, if you're building sustainably, it's gonna cost money, and we have to make these investments. So tell us, you mentioned one of the things is we don't know what protections we need.
Right.
So what are the 5 key legal protections that we need?
Awesome. My favorite topic. So one of the first things I did when I started Trans-Sahara was just go through the myriad of various legal protections that exist out there for businesses and distill it down to what the core ones are. And that's how we came up with the 5 key legal protections. But essentially they are, and because I like alliteration, they all start with S to make it easier to remember. Structure.
Okay.
Which is all about making sure you've got the right legal structure for your business.
Okay.
And this is important because, it's all around making sure you're building a business that's capable of surviving for the long term. And so in most cases, that means incorporating as a limited liability company. There are other forms of business structure that might be relevant, sole trader, limited liability partnership, and others. But it's really thinking about what your long-term goals are for the business, and then making sure that you match that up with the right legal structure, so that you're not, hampering yourself from reaching that goal. If you need investors, then being a sole practitioner is not going to work, essentially. The next key legal protection is shareholders. And this is about all getting clarity over the ownership, control, and running of the business. Especially if you've got business partners. And it's really important to understand between you how it is that you're going to run the business, what happens if things go wrong, and essentially having a shareholders agreement that is a safety net for the business, so that if you ever get in a situation where the two co-founders are unable to agree on the way forward, that doesn't mean the business stagnates and you can't move. There's a process for dealing with that disagreement. The next one is standard terms. Now, this is where the money's at. This one's important. This is making sure that you've got a set of standard terms or a standard contract that protects your interests when you're actually trading with customers. So a contract for your customers and anybody else who helps you provide your product or service, whether it's a supplier or a distributor, or if you have an events business, it might be the exhibitors or the speakers. Having an agreement in place that really sets out how you do business, reflects the way that you do business, and protects you from the specific risks of operating in your industry. The next key protection is service agreements. And this is all about making sure that you've got agreements in place that cover arrangements with people who work for the business. So those could be employees, interns, freelancers, design, development agency, all of those people. They're going to have access to your confidential information, such as, your price list, your client list, your partners. You want to make sure you've got an agreement with them that covers you for against the risks of them disseminating that information or, passing it on to one of your competitors.
Excellent.
And then the final S is secrets. And this relates to your intellectual property and confidential information. So it's where you're thinking about protecting your brand with a trademark, really identifying any other intellectual property assets that you might have within the business that's capable of being protected. And then making sure that you've got things like a standard NDA that you use anytime you're entering into discussions with a new potential partner, to make sure that you're protecting that intellectual property before engaging in conversations where you're sharing that information with anyone else.
Excellent.
So that's a quick tour of the 5 key legal protections.
That is so That's so helpful. And I have some questions for you. So the first one is regarding the structure of your business. And this is a little off topic, but we're both women in business, Black women in business. And sometimes I think with us as women, whereas, and this might be slightly biased, this is just my own experience. I think men are more prone to being like, we're going to scale, we're going to go big, you know, we're going to, so they are more sometimes, and this may be very stereotypical, but they're more, you know, have these things in place. Whereas typically us as women sometimes build lifestyle businesses that are really just to bring some money in. And so it's like, you know, we're very nice and, you know, touchy feely sometimes. So sometimes, you know, these things get put on the wayside, you know. And there's also that thing about difficult conversations. We as women are very much about relationships, and then to bring in the fact that, okay, well, we need to sign some contracts here, like, you know, can you speak on that, or what are your views on that, and have you kind of experienced or seen that?
Yeah, I think what you describe is quite common. Having said that, I've been really, really fortunate to work with some amazing women, clients who are on top of it, building amazing businesses and don't need, any convincing from me as to why it feels important. But I think, ultimately it's, being in business, being an entrepreneur is so unlike anything else we've done before. Especially if you're the type of woman who, you've done well in school, you've followed the rules, you've played by, you've done what people are expecting of you. And often in, today's culture, that is what is expected of young girls and women. You do what's expected. You make sure that you're not making anyone uncomfortable. You make sure you're nice. All of that stuff is, it's beneficial in certain scenarios. So perhaps if you're entering the corporate world and you want to go up that ladder, it can help you to a certain extent. In business, it's completely completely damaging in many ways. When you're starting a business, I think the first thing that we have to do is really switch that mindset and almost see our business as a child that we need to protect. And in that way, we can tap into our perhaps more natural intuition as a woman. And instead of thinking about pleasing other people, think about, I'm building a business here, which is going to last for the long term. I need to protect it. I need to make sure that it can survive. I need to make sure it's not going to be taken advantage of. I need to make sure that it's still here when I'm gone. And so I think coming from that mindset, it's a bit easier to navigate those more difficult conversations.
And I love that, because it is a matter of mindset, and so much of this journey is mindset, and it's an entrepreneurial economic journey, but it's also a personal development journey. And I think maybe that is one of the reasons why sometimes legal considerations aren't considered, because it is a mindset. If you're building an empire, if you're building it, like, it's not even negotiable. Like, we have to kind of consider these things. And I think another thing is, sometimes we don't consider the consequences of not doing it. If you've never experienced the pain of failure, like I always say, a lot of my clients are those people that have experienced the pain of launching badly. But sometimes, sometimes when you haven't experienced the pain of not having legal protection, you think it's an option. So what are some of the pitfalls of not having things like, terms of service or client and partner contracts? What have you seen? Some real life examples?
There's so many. What I will do is give you one example for each of the 5 S's. So the first one on structure, not having the right structure can mean that you as an individual, if you've just started running your business in your own name, essentially you haven't set up a company, and let's say you're selling a product, and then one of your customers suffers an injury or some sort of loss as a result of using it, which happens, then if they bring a claim against your business, that's a claim against you personally. That means that, God forbid, if you don't have the money to pay the claim, to satisfy the damages that have been awarded, to that client, then they can come after your house, they can come after your, your car, your personal assets. And so it's really important to see your business as separate to you, as a separate entity that enters into its own contracts, has its own sets of liabilities, which sit within that company and do not leach over into your personal life.
Yeah.
In relation to shareholders, often the issue here is co-founder conflict. And this is inevitable. If you've got a business with, 2, 3, 4 founders, there will be situations where one of them wants to leave or there's a disagreement on the way forward. And if you don't have in place a system, a mechanism for resolving that conflict, then it can stall the business. It could even end the business potentially.
Wow.
With standard terms, a lot of the problems that our clients face are around cash flow, and clients not necessarily paying on time or at all in some cases, or demanding additional services over and above what was agreed at the beginning, which then eat into your profit margins. So having a set of contract terms which prevent those, which minimize the risk of that happening, for example, by allowing you to suspend your services if they fail to pay on time, or by allowing you to charge interest as a reason for them to want to pay on time, or allowing you to insist upon them going through a process if they want to initiate changes that enable you to price those changes, is really important. On service agreements, I think the biggest risk here is that when you've got an employee who has access to all of your information, them sort of walking out, joining a competitor, and sharing that with them. And if you don't have an agreement in place with them, there's absolutely nothing to stop them doing that. And in fact, your competitors are probably actively looking for your employees for that very reason. So, and of course, as I mentioned, it's interns, it's anyone else that you give access to this information to. So that's really important. And then finally, on secrets, the really heartbreaking one is when someone has fallen in love with their brand. They've gone all in, they've got a beautiful logo, they've bought the domains, they've got the business cards, all of that. And then they receive a letter saying that, this name actually belongs to someone else, as it's their registered trademark. You must stop using it and pay us X for the months that you've been using it. And that's really heartbreaking because, often people do fall in love with their brands and you've built up a following behind it. And, just overnight, you find yourself in a position of having to ditch it and rebrand. So those are a few examples of what can go wrong if you don't take these things into account. And ultimately, without legal security, your business is never safe. Any of these problems could arise at any point in time and just knock you out of the water. So it's about giving yourself, I guess, that peace of mind that your business has legal security, and you're not going to be knocked out unexpectedly by something that crops up in future.
Incredible. So useful. So if you are not convinced by now that you need these 5 legal protections, well, I don't know what to say. So all that remains is, Rasheda, we now know that we need these 5 legal protections. If there's anyone watching this and they've realized, oh my gosh, I don't have any of these, or some of these are missing, how can they get in contact with you and what services do you provide?
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Well, as a first step, if you simply just want to identify whether you do have any gaps in your business and what those might be, we offer a free legal health check, which is essentially 24 or 25 yes/no questions. You get a score at the end of it, which tells you how you score in each of the 5 key legal protections, and then a report by email on what you can do to really shore up your protection in each of those areas. That's available on our website at www.strandsahara.com. And then we, of course, offer services to enable you to put those protections in place. And so the ones that are, that people come to us all the time for are the trademark protection, and custom contracts, where we actually create contracts with you, understanding how your business works, and draft them in such a way that you also understand how they work, so that you're in a really good position to negotiate should clients want to, and can use the agreement over and over again with new clients. So it's really cost effective and worth investing in for your business. We also offer contract reviews. So if you've already got an agreement and you think it's perhaps not quite up to scratch and you just want someone to look over it, to give you recommendations for amendments and improvements, then we can do that too. And of course, we also offer consultations. And the thing that I'm most excited about is that we experienced with many of our clients that they kept coming back and really wanted a way of having a more ongoing, on-demand type legal support for their business. And so we created a membership to allow for that. And so that's something also to think about. If you know that you're going to need a few of these things over time and you want to work in a more cost-effective way with us on a longer term basis, then the membership might be perfect for you.
Fantastic. So lots of options there. And if you are launching anything significant, then you do need legal protection. So do get in contact with Rasheda. That has been so helpful. I think you and I need to have a conversation about a couple of things. So that is amazing. Thank you so much, Rasheda. And please do connect with Rasheda here on LinkedIn. But before we sign off, do you have any questions? And I'm just going to check LinkedIn because, as many of you know, we are streaming from StreamYard. So let me just double check if we have any questions, any comments before we sign off. Let's see.
Do ask people. This is an opportunity to get free legal advice. So, you know.
Exactly. So I don't see any questions. But thank you so much, Rasheda. A couple of announcements from me. I actually launched the 6P launch planner last week. It is now available to set on sale. So if you are launching a project and you want to launch it in a way that is comprehensive and sustainable, many of you will know I have my 6P launch framework. The planner is based on that, 149 pages, broken down into a number of sections. So you can now get that at thelaunchstrategist.com. I am also launching a 6-month mastermind at the end of this week. So if you want to find out about that, also direct message me as well. Long story short, if you are launching a project, get in touch, myself, for legal issues, Rasheda, and get the support we need, because we have to stop flying solo and trying to do everything on our own. So that is it from me. I will see you at the same time next week for Lunchtime Launch Tips at 1 p.m. next week. Have an amazing day and rest of the week. Bye-bye.